Hey there, English learner. Welcome back to the English Talk community. I'm so excited you're here today because we're about to dive into something that's going to completely change how you sound when you speak English. You know that feeling, right? When you're talking to a native speaker, and even though your grammar is correct, even though you know all the words, something still feels off. You sound stiff, formal, maybe a bit robotic. And you look at native speakers and think, how do they make it sound so effortless, so natural, so relaxed? Well, here's the thing. I totally get it. I understand exactly how frustrating that can be. You've put in all this work, you've studied for years, but you still don't sound like them. And today, I'm going to share with you the one secret trick that native speakers use without even thinking about it. This is the game changer that makes their English sound completely natural and relaxed. But here's what's amazing about this trick. It's not about perfect grammar. It's not about having a huge vocabulary. It's something so simple that once you learn it, you'll start hearing it everywhere. And more importantly, you'll start using it naturally too. Now, before we jump in, if this sounds like something you need in your English journey, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps other English learners find this content. And if you're serious about taking your fluency to the next level, make sure you subscribe because we share practical tips like this every week. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's discover this secret that's going to make your English sound completely different starting today. Trust me, by the end of this episode, you'll never listen to English the same way again. All right, so what is this magical trick that native speakers use? Well, before I tell you exactly what it is, I want you to think about the last conversation you had in English. Maybe it was with a colleague, maybe it was ordering coffee, or maybe it was just practicing with a friend. Now, I want you to remember how you felt during that conversation. Were you thinking about every single word before you said it? Were you translating in your head? Were you worried about making mistakes? Yeah, I thought so. And that's completely normal, by the way. Every English learner goes through this. But here's what I noticed when I started really paying attention to native speakers. There's something they do that makes their speech flow differently. It's not just about speed. It's not about accent. It's about something much more subtle. And once you understand this, everything starts to make sense. You see, when you learned English, you probably learned it the formal way, right? You learned complete sentences, proper grammar structures, the correct way to say things. But here's the problem with that approach. Native speakers don't actually talk like textbooks. Let me give you a scenario. Imagine you're at work and your colleague asks you about your weekend plans. If you learned English the traditional way, you might say something like, "I am going to visit my friend on Saturday, and then I will go to the cinema to watch a movie." That's perfectly correct English, but it sounds like you're reading from a script. Now, a native speaker talking about the same thing might say something completely different. But I'm not going to tell you what they would say just yet. Because first, I need you to understand why this difference exists. The thing is, when native speakers learn English as children, they don't learn grammar rules first. They learn patterns, they learn rhythm, they learn the natural flow of the language. And there's one specific thing they do that creates this natural flow, something that textbooks rarely teach. You know what's interesting? I bet you've heard this trick thousands of times, but you probably never realized it was happening. It's so natural to native speakers that they don't even know they're doing it. But it's the difference between sounding like you're giving a presentation and sounding like you're having a real conversation. And here's where it gets really interesting. This trick isn't just about sounding more natural. It actually makes speaking English easier for you too. When you start using this technique, you'll find that English flows more naturally from your mouth. You'll stop overthinking every word, and you'll start feeling more relaxed when you speak. But there's something else I need to tell you about this trick. It's not just one thing. It's actually a combination of small changes that work together to create that natural sound. And the beautiful thing is, once you understand the pattern, you can start applying it immediately. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably wondering if this is going to be complicated to learn. You're maybe worried that it's going to be another grammar rule to memorize. But here's the good news. This isn't about memorizing anything. It's about understanding a natural pattern that your brain will start recognizing automatically. Think about it this way. When you were learning to drive, at first you had to think about every single thing. The steering wheel, the pedals, the mirrors, the speed. But now, you probably don't even think about most of those things. They became automatic. That's exactly what's going to happen with this English trick. But before I reveal exactly what this trick is, I want you to understand something important. This isn't about being lazy with English. This isn't about speaking incorrectly. Native speakers use this technique in professional settings, in casual conversations, even in formal situations sometimes. It's not about being sloppy. It's about being natural. And here's something that might surprise you. You probably already know how to do parts of this trick, but you're fighting against it because you think it's wrong. You've been taught to speak properly, so when your instincts tell you to do something more natural, you correct yourself back to the formal way. I see this all the time with students. They'll start to say something in a natural way, then stop themselves and switch to the more formal version. It's like they're afraid of sounding too casual or making a mistake. But what they don't realize is that the natural way was actually more correct in that context. So what exactly is this trick? Well, it has to do with how native speakers connect their words, how they blend sounds together, and how they use the natural rhythm of English. But it's not just about pronunciation. It's about understanding the flow of the language. Native speakers don't speak word by word by word. They speak in chunks, in natural groups of words that flow together. And there's a specific way they do this that creates that relaxed, natural sound you've been trying to achieve. Are you ready to discover exactly what this is and how you can start using it today? Okay, so here it is. The secret that native speakers use is something called contractions and reductions, but not just the basic ones you learned in school like don't and can't. I'm talking about the natural way native speakers blend words together in real conversation. Let me show you exactly what I mean with some real-life situations you probably face every day. Picture this. You're at a coffee shop, and the barista asks, "What would you like today?" Now, if you learned English the traditional way, you might respond with, "I would like a large coffee, please." That's correct, but it sounds formal and stiff. But here's what a native speaker would actually say. "I'd like a large coffee, please." Or even more naturally, "I'll have a large coffee, please." Notice how the I would becomes I'd, and how the whole sentence flows more smoothly? That's the beginning of this trick, but it goes much deeper than that. Native speakers don't just contract obvious words. They blend sounds together in ways that textbooks never teach you. For example, instead of saying, "What are you going to do?" they might say, "What are you going to do?" Or even, "What you gonna do?" Now, I know what you're thinking. You've probably been told that gonna is incorrect or too informal. But here's the truth. Native speakers use these reductions in all kinds of situations, even in business meetings. The key is knowing when and how to use them appropriately. Let's look at another common situation. You're talking to a friend about your plans for tonight. Instead of saying, "I am going to meet Sarah at 7 o'clock, a native speaker would more naturally say, "I'm going to meet Sarah at 7. Notice how much more relaxed and conversational that sounds? Or imagine you're at work and your boss asks if you finished that report. Instead of, "Yes, I have completed it," you could say, "Yeah, I've finished it." Or even, "Yep, it's done." These aren't lazy mistakes. They're natural patterns that make your English sound more authentic. Here's another example that might surprise you. When native speakers want to ask, "Do you want to go?" they rarely say all those words clearly. Instead, you'll hear something like, "Do you want to go?" or "You want to go." The "do you" blends together, and "want to" becomes "wanna." And this happens everywhere in English. "I have got to go" becomes "I've got to go," or even "I gotta go." I do not know becomes I don't know, or in casual speech, I don't know. These aren't wrong. They're how the language naturally flows. But here's where it gets really interesting for you as an English learner. When you start using these natural reductions, something magical happens. Your English doesn't just sound more native-like, it actually becomes easier to speak. Your mouth doesn't have to work as hard to pronounce every single syllable clearly. Think about a typical workplace conversation. Your colleague might ask, "Are you going to the meeting?" Instead of the full formal response, "Yes, I am going to attend the meeting," you could naturally say, "Yeah, I'm going to be there," or, "Yep, I'll be there." It's shorter, easier to say, and sounds completely natural. Let's try another scenario. You're on the phone with a friend who's running late. They might say, "I am going to be there in 5 minutes." But more naturally, they'd say, "I'll be there in 5," or "I'm going to be there in 5." And if they're really rushed, they might even say, "Be there in 5." Here's what's beautiful about this. You don't have to memorize hundreds of contractions. Once you understand the pattern, your brain starts to pick up on these reductions naturally. You'll start hearing them everywhere, and more importantly, you'll start feeling comfortable using them yourself. But there's something crucial I need to tell you about when to use these reductions. Context matters. In a job interview, you might stick closer to the formal versions. But in casual conversations, using these natural reductions actually makes you sound more fluent and comfortable with English. For example, if someone asks, "How was your weekend?" you could say, "It was really good, thank you." But it would sound much more natural to say, "It was really good, thanks," or even, "Really good, thanks." The reduction makes the conversation flow better. And here's something that might help you feel more confident about this. Native speakers aren't thinking about grammar rules when they speak. They're following the natural rhythm and flow of the language. When you say, "I'm gonna," instead of, "I am going to," you're not being incorrect, you're being natural. The key is to start paying attention to these patterns in real conversations, in movies, in podcasts. Listen for how native speakers actually connect their words, not how textbooks say they should speak. You'll be amazed at how much more you start to notice. But there's still more to this trick that I haven't told you yet. The reductions are just one part of it. There's also something about rhythm and stress patterns that completely changes how natural your English sounds. And that's what we're going to explore next. Now that you understand contractions and reductions, let me share with you the second part of this native speaker trick. It's about rhythm and stress patterns. And this is where everything really comes together to create that natural, relaxed sound. You see, English has a natural beat to it, almost like music. Native speakers don't stress every word equally. Instead, they emphasize certain words and let others flow more quietly. This creates a rhythm that makes English sound smooth and natural, rather than choppy and robotic. I totally understand if this sounds complicated right now. When I first realized this pattern, I felt overwhelmed too. But here's the thing. You don't need to analyze it like a scientist. You just need to start feeling the natural flow of the language. Let me show you what I mean. Take this sentence. I'm going to the store to buy some milk. If you stress every word equally, it sounds like, I'm going to the store to buy some milk. That's not how native speakers say it at all. Instead, they would stress the important words and let the small words flow quickly. I'm going to the store to buy some milk. Notice how words like to, the, and some are said more quickly and quietly? That's the natural rhythm of English. And here's where it gets really interesting for you. When you combine this rhythm with the reductions we talked about earlier, something magical happens. I'm going to the store becomes I'm gonna the store, with that natural beat. I'm gonna the store. But you know what? I bet you're feeling a bit uncertain about this right now. Maybe you're thinking, but what if I sound too casual? What if I make mistakes? I completely understand that feeling. You've worked so hard to speak English correctly, and now I'm telling you to break some of the rules you learned. Here's what I want you to remember. Native speakers aren't being careless when they speak this way. They're following the natural patterns of the language. And when you start using these patterns too, you'll sound more fluent, not less educated. Think about it this way. When you're having a conversation with a friend, do you want to sound like you're reading from a textbook? Or do you want to sound relaxed, natural, and easy to talk to? The rhythm and stress patterns of native speakers help create that comfortable, conversational feeling. Let me give you another example. Imagine someone asks you, "What did you do yesterday?" A textbook response might be, "I went to work and then I came home and watched television." But with natural rhythm and reductions, it becomes, "I went to work, then came home and watched TV." Notice how much smoother that sounds? The stressed words tell the story. Went to work, then came home and watched TV. The little words like I and flow quickly between the important words. This creates a natural music to your speech that native speakers recognize instantly. But here's something really important I want you to understand. You don't have to perfect this overnight. In fact, trying too hard to get it perfect might make you sound unnatural in a different way. The key is to start noticing these patterns and letting them influence your speech gradually. I know this might feel challenging at first. You might catch yourself going back to the formal way of speaking, and that's totally okay. Change takes time, and your brain needs time to adjust to these new patterns. Be patient with yourself. Here's a practical way to start. Listen to native speakers in casual conversations. Pay attention to how they group their words together, which words they emphasize, and which words they say more quickly. You'll start to hear the rhythm I'm talking about. For example, listen to how native speakers say common phrases like, "I don't know." Instead of "I do not know" with equal stress on each word, you'll hear "I don't know" or "I don't know" with the stress on don't and know, while I flows quickly at the beginning. Or take the phrase, "What are you doing?" Native speakers rarely say all those words clearly. You'll hear "what you doing" or "what are you doing" with the stress on what and doing, while the middle words blend together naturally. And here's something that might surprise you. Even in more formal situations, native speakers still use this natural rhythm. They might use fewer contractions, but they still follow the stress patterns that make English flow smoothly. For instance, in a business meeting, someone might say, "We need to discuss the budget for next quarter." Notice how the important words get stressed. We need to discuss the budget for next quarter. The small words like to, the, and for are said more quickly. This rhythm isn't just about sounding more native. It actually makes English easier for others to understand too. When you use natural stress patterns, you're highlighting the important information and helping your listener follow your meaning more easily. But there's one more crucial element to this native speaker trick that ties everything together. It's about understanding the emotional tone behind these patterns. And that's what's going to take your English from sounding technically correct to sounding genuinely natural and engaging. So there you have it, the complete native speaker trick that makes English sound relaxed, casual, and totally natural. It's the combination of natural contractions and reductions, plus the rhythm and stress patterns that create the musical flow of English. Remember that scenario I mentioned at the beginning? When your colleague asks about your weekend plans. Now you know that instead of, "I am going to visit my friend on Saturday and then I will go to the cinema to watch a movie," a native speaker would naturally say, "I'm gonna visit my friend on Saturday, then go see a movie." Same information, but with that relaxed conversational flow. And that feeling you had about sounding stiff and formal? That's going to change as you start incorporating these patterns. You'll find yourself speaking more smoothly, thinking less about individual words, and feeling more confident in conversations. The beautiful thing about this trick is that it's not really a trick at all. It's simply how English naturally wants to be spoken. You're not learning something artificial. You're discovering the real rhythm of the language that native speakers absorbed as children. So here's what I want you to do. Start listening for these patterns everywhere. Notice the contractions, feel the rhythm, and begin experimenting with them in your own speech. Don't worry about perfection. Focus on natural flow. Your English journey doesn't have to be about rigid grammar rules and formal structures. It can be about discovering the natural, musical quality of the language and letting it flow through you. If this episode helped you understand something new about English, hit that like button and share it with another English learner who needs to hear this. And make sure you're subscribed because we're always sharing practical insights like this that will transform how you speak English. Until next time, keep practicing, keep listening, and remember, natural English is within your reach. You've got this!